you guys for a couple hours. I know Jake mentioned it the other day. He teaches school too, and he's like, man, I'm actually looking forward to baseball school because the kids there actually listen, unlike at my regular school, which is so funny to hear because, hey, we've got a lot of us athletes in here taking notes, learning a lot. I'm getting better day by day. This is awesome. This is huge. Preparing us for that next level, preparing us for this, and just continuing to grow in any way that we can. If you have questions on anything, please reach out to us. You can do it on Instagram. You can do it on email with your parents. You can do it on here in the chats. I put it just to me again today, just for a little bit. And then once we get rolling, we can open it up to everyone. But if you have questions, please reach out. Today, we're going to talk about situational hitting and what that means about adjusting pitch to pitch and how to adjust from at bat to at bat, pitch to pitch, all that good stuff. So situational hitting, and we can get into some team hitting, we can get into situational wise, but here's kind of how I want to preface it and just lay the groundwork for this. For situational hitting, we mean, hey, what's the situation? So runner on second base, nobody out. What do we do with that? Runner on, and if we keep our mics muted real quick, guys, just so we don't have any of that feedback, we'll be good to go. But just if you think about the situational hitting, hey, what's the situation, right? Second base, nobody out. Second and third, nobody out. Runner on third base, less than 2 outs. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to get them in? Are we trying to score a run? Runner on first base, nobody out. Do we lay a bunt down? Where do we lay the bunt down? What do we do with the hit and run? All those different things. So getting to that with the situations, I'm going to break it into the hitting categories, and then we can kind of just go with the flow and go from there. So hitting-wise, a lot of coaches, and depending on your age, maybe some things are going to change, but when there's runners in scoring position, what are we trying to do? For me, being in the middle of the lineup, it's driving in RBIs. There's a runner on second base, nobody out, rather than just moving him over and hitting a ground ball to first base or second base and getting myself out. I would rather hit a double and score the RBI and still be on base. That's just my preference. Everybody's different, and some of your coaches may be different. So if your coach wants you in that situation to hit a ground ball to first base, second base, to get on base for your guys and to move that runner over, then, hey, listen to coach. Whatever he says, you might have to do it just because that's different on each one of us. But for me, just when runners are in scoring position, what is our mindset like? I think a lot of it goes into our mindset. What are we trying to do at the plate? There's a guy, Johnny Gomes, and we mentioned this yesterday in the coaches room. Johnny Gomes, he's an ex-big leaguer for a while, and he was our hitting coordinator with the D-backs, and he asked, what are you trying to do with the runner on second base, nobody out? And I said, well, I'm trying to move him over. I want to get him over. He said, why? I said, I don't know, because that's what I've always been told since I was young. Hey, runner on second base, nobody out, move him over. He said, why don't you just try to get a hit? And I was like, whoa, just get a hit? Like, what? That makes so much sense. What if I just tried to get a hit and drove him in? Now I got an RBI, I'm on base, and it helps the team even more than if I just moved him over. So just thinking about that, what are we trying to do in these RBI situations, runners in scoring position, ducks on the pond? What am I trying to do at the dish? We always want to drive the guy in. That's our mindset. Depending on the inning, depending on the game, depending on the situations, it might change, and we can get into that here in a minute. But just the baseline, if there's a runner on third base, less than 2 outs, rather than trying to hit a pop-up to the outfield or a ground ball up the middle, let's hit a line drive to the middle. Like, let's think about hitting a line drive in the center of the field. No matter how big or small we are, no matter how athletic we are, no matter if we're a softball or baseball player, if we think about hitting a line drive in the middle of the field, can we ever go wrong? Probably not. We'll probably never go wrong hitting line drives in the middle of the field. And if you happen to line out to the shortstop or second baseman, I think coach will still be okay with that. So as long as our mindset's right, our approach is right, we're good to go. And the last thing I'll say is a lot of the times when we get into these RBI situations, we get tense, we get scared, or we get nervous, or we have a little bit of fear creep in, like, oh my gosh, there's runner on base. Finally, people got in scoring position, and now I got to drive them in. And there's nobody out. What if I get out? What if I don't succeed? And that's normal. It's totally normal. We're going to go through that sometimes. We're going to experience some of those emotions. But understanding what is my job at this specific moment. Like, when there's a runner in scoring position, what is my job, and what does the team need me to do? They need me to get this guy in. However we get that runner in, I don't care how it happens, we get him in. Those are what make the good teams the great teams, and what separates a lot of good teams. One-run games are hard to win. They're really, really hard to win. I remember in college, our coach told us, hey, if we win more one-run games than we lose, we're going to be really, really good this year. And we won 75% of the one-run games. It was incredible. Now, that's different because that gets into the team aspect, but how can we help our team win? We win those games by executing when there's runners in scoring position. We should all be itching to hit when there's runners in scoring position. We can simulate that in practice, but when there's runners in scoring position, you are ready to hit your fastballs. Ready to hit your fastballs in your zone, locked in, and you are not missing it. It is me and the pitcher, and I am whacking that pitch when it comes in my zone. I'm ready to go, trying to get that runner in. We'll go ahead and toss it over to Jake, and then we can work down the line. But that's what I got. I just want to kind of preface it with that, kind of lay the background on what I think and believe in with runners in scoring position of scoring them, getting them in, and driving in RBIs, driving in runs.
Yeah, so I want to look at it from two perspectives, and we'll start with the perspective from the opposing team or opposing coach. Okay, so for a lot of you guys, if you're playing 8, 9, 10, 11, 12U baseball right now, there's not a whole lot of scouting that goes into that. But as you get older, other teams and coaches will have more information about you and your team that they're going to use against you when you're playing. Okay, so for our high-level guys, and I say this because when we go into a high school game, we track every single high school at bat for every single player on the other team, and we shift about 40% of the guys. So we know exactly what they do. We know how often they swing at the first pitch, what kind of damage they do, all those things. Okay, so looking at it from that front, my first piece of advice to you guys is when you go up there, be yourself, right? Don't go up there. If you've never hit a bomb in your life, don't go up there with the runner on second, nobody out, and think, all right, this is it. I'm hitting a tater. I'm getting my first one right now. All right, because when you try to be something you're not, you're guaranteed to fail. It's not going to work out, right? If you haven't practiced it and it's not something that you've consistently done, then you're not going to suddenly figure out how to do it in a game. Okay, so there is no shame. And I know it doesn't feel great. It almost feels like wiffle ball when you have runners in scoring position. Imagine like getting hit by pitch in wiffle ball and you have to take your base. Like, that's not fun. So I get it, because as a hitter, you see that runner out there and you want to be the one to drive him in. But you have to understand too, there's a lot of coaches out there. If the base is open and they respect you as a hitter, you might not get a pitch that entire at bat that you can drive. Okay, I can tell you, if we're facing a dude and we know that the guy on deck isn't as good of a hitter and there's a base open, okay, we're not just going to put him on, but we're going to throw curveballs in the dirt and we're going to work off the plate and let that guy get himself out. Because the number one reason that we fail with runners in scoring position physically is because we try to do too much. Okay, so mentally, the number one reason that we fail is because of pressure. Okay, we've talked through pressure in here before. It's anxiety from what might happen in the future, and it's fear from things that have happened in the past. So when there's a runner in scoring position and you go up and you're taking your last 3 at-bats with runners in scoring position with you to the plate, and those haven't gone well, you've already failed because your mindset isn't in the right spot when you go up there. Okay, so if you go up there and you line out to the center fielder, runner doesn't advance, anything like that, that's still a great at-bat, right? That's still a quality at-bat for you. So sometimes we get so caught up in this idea of driving the runner, and then when we don't do that, we feel like we've failed. Yes, that's our goal, but there's a lot of other secondary goals that we can accomplish along the way, even if we don't drive them in. Okay, so if you try to drive him in and you move him up, still a good at bat. You moved him. Might not have been the primary goal. We definitely want to get him in, but you still moved him up, right? If you take a walk and you pass that bat to the next guy in line, that's a great team at bat, right? Because now the pitcher has more pressure, more people on base, okay? And then if you miss hit a ball, and this is huge, and you put it on the ground, your at bat's not over, right? You're not done until the umpire makes the call. So you got to get out of the box. We got to get through the bag, create pressure with the way that you run the bases too, so that way the other team doesn't have an easy play. Okay, so there's a lot of steps that we can take. From the opposing coach's side, it's don't get yourself out, right? Austin said it best, drive something in your zones in the area that you can. But most importantly, the biggest thing that you can control is just be you. If you're a line drive hitter, hit a line drive. If you're a home run hitter, then get it in the air, right? But don't try to go outside of who you are in those situations and try to be this spectacular major league player if you're not that. Just be you and do something successful that helps yourself and the team win the game.
Yeah. Being you. I mean, not forgetting who you are, not forgetting what you do best.
Yep.
Stick with my approach. The approach doesn't change. It's not, okay, all of a sudden somebody's in scoring position and now I'm trying to swing at everything. like think about it as a 2-0 count. Like, what am I trying to drive in a 2-0 count? Probably a fastball in the middle of the plate. So with runners in scoring position, we try sometimes as hitters, and I'm a victim of this big time, is I want to hit everything. So now I start chasing and expand my zone. Once you expand your zone as a pitcher, like Jake said, that's their goal. They're trying to get you out and get you to make bad contact, like weak contact. So knowing that the pitcher wants me to make weak contact, I've got to put myself in a position to be selective, to be locked into my pitches, what I can do best to give the team the best chance to win. Ronnie, what do you got to add on to that? What's your mindset, especially when you played too, like even playing and coaching wise, what's your mindset?
Yeah, so I remember getting really good at situational hitting whenever I started to incorporate it in my practices and in my prep work. You have to visually see yourself in a situation to understand how to be successful in it. So, for instance, if you go into practice and you're the kind of guy that just goes in there and just hits absolute bombs, it's funny. I actually had a kid today send me a video of 10 straight swings where he literally was just trying to launch balls over the fence. And my first text message back to him was, what was the purpose of that round? Now, if your purpose in that round is in your mind, you've got a runner on third base with less than 2 outs and the infield's playing in, okay, maybe that's okay that you're trying to lift balls in the outfield. But if you're just going up there and trying to just launch balls, then I don't really think that you're being super productive in your prep work. So I really think that you have to put yourself in that situation in practice in order to be really good at it in a game. For instance, every single day when I would hit during my prep rounds and my warm-up rounds, I would always do a move run around, always. Because most of my hits that I would take, I would try and drive left center gap. And then my move them, since I'm a left-handed hitter, I'd try and pull. And so instead of just thinking about pulling baseballs, I would always give myself a focus for that round so that I was putting myself in a situation that if I was in a game, it was comfortable for me to be able to do that. And I think for a lot of you guys that go into the cages, or a lot of you are hitting off the tee right now, put yourself in situations and allow yourself to kind of understand that there is a focus in your mind on what you're trying to do, and then let's execute on that. So if you're doing tee work and you're going to work on the outside pitch, think about a situation in the game where hitting the ball opposite field is valuable, and then that should be your thought process for that round off the tee or front toss or BP work, right? And I think that putting ourselves in those situations will help us be more successful in a game.
That's huge, man. I love that. It starts with your preparation.
Yep.
I just wrote that down. I just wrote like, hey, success comes from your preparation. And Ronnie, you prepare like a champion on and off the field, and now into business. Notice how this translates directly to business in real life. So just understanding, hey, how do we put ourselves in game-like situations? And sometimes it's not always you that's able to be in control of that, especially at a younger age. But in the cage or maybe in BP, when you have a situational round, taking it with full focus. Some of us are high school athletes. You might get into a situational round where you're like, move them over, I don't really care. Bunt to first, bunt to third, I don't care. Get them in and get them over in whatever it is, whatever situation you're going through. You're like, yeah, I'm good. I'll hit the next 2 rounds. But guess what? Like, those rounds are preparing you for the game. So it's really important to take every single preparation round like you are going into a game 7 of the World Series, because like Ronnie said, it's going to prepare you for that situation when you come to the game, and now you're going to be ready for it rather than lagging behind everyone else. Adam, what do you got to add to that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I love what Ronnie said about putting yourself in those situations. One thing that I like to do with individual instruction, but then also like team batting practice is we have some situations that we run through on a regular basis because we see them a lot, and we try to make sure that the athletes are prepared to do those things regularly in the game. But I like to just spit out different situations to the kids, and then before we go into it, I say, hey, what's your approach here? What is your goal for this at bat? And you find out pretty quickly that there are some kids that have never thought about putting themselves in those situations, and that when they do step into the cage, that they are just going in there to I sent this to Ronnie yesterday about asking about pre-batting practice routine. How many guys are just going in there and just flat out, quote, hitting? Like, you're not going in there for hitting practice. You go there with an intent to work on something, whether that's fundamentals or if you're just if you're really just struggling with a lot of the fundamentals right now, let's just put ourselves in game-like situations and just try to be successful in that manner. And maybe that gets us into a rhythm of being a good hitter. So, putting yourself in situations in batting practice and testing yourself and even quizzing each other. You got this time right now where you can't get out on the field and be doing a lot of things. I remember when I was a kid, sometimes my friends and I would be in the car driving somewhere. We just spit out different situations offensively or even defensively within a game and say, hey, what would you do in this situation if you were hitting, or what would you do in this situation defensively if you got the ball? I think that's a good way to practice that visualization that we were talking about and seeing ourselves in those situations before they actually happen. And then the biggest thing is that allows us to do is it allows us to go into those situations when they actually happen in the game with a plan, and having an idea of what we're going to do before it actually happens. I think that my dream team, if I was ever being a coach, would be able to be in the situation to where the only management of a game I'd ever have to do would be to plug and play guys in different situations, and everything else is taken care of. So they know when they would need to bunt at most opportune time. They would know what they would need to do in different situations based on where runners are in scoring position or whether or not they need to move runners over. If you guys are smart baseball players and you know that stuff beforehand, and you're not just going up there just trying to take hacks and hope for the best, you're going to be a much more successful player for your team, and you're going to be viewed a lot differently by college coaches. So go into your next practice rounds, not only working on fundamentals, but start trying to figure out which parts of the plate you're successful at, which ones you're not, and put yourself in different situations. And when in doing that, make sure you're taking what's given to you. Don't try to force the issue. Yes, there's runners on second and third, and a hard hit ball here and a double into the gap would be the best thing for us, right? But if you're not given the opportunity, like Jake said, from the opposing coach's side, if they're throwing soft in a way or balls in the dirt, and they know, and you're usually a free swinger, you got to take a step back, take what's given to you, and don't give that team that out that they desperately need just because you have a bad approach.
And here's the thing, to go up and Adam just a little bit. A lot of us grow up and you have coaches who don't give you this intent in pregame. Okay. And sometimes they just don't know. They mean well, but they just haven't gone through this. So this is where it becomes your responsibility to take ownership and leadership of your own development as a player, right? Just because coach says, hey, come on in, take 10 swings, we're getting ready for the game. You can develop in your own mind. You can say, all right, these first 3 swings, I'm just letting it loose, just feeling good. Okay. Next 3 swings, I'm moving a runner. Next 3 swings, like you can go through situations in your own mind or with teammates to where you don't need to rely heavily on a coach for that. If they give that to you, that's great. But I think a big disconnect sometimes with you guys as players is you wait for your coach to give that. And then if they don't, you allow that to be your excuse to not have intent on the player side. All right. So make sure that you're developing that on your own if it's not being given to you.
I got one other thing to mention into that too. I've had a lot of the high school reach out to me and say, well, you're telling us to have all these situations and things like that. Well, when am I allowed the free swing? Well, the real answer in that is when in a game do you have a free swing? When in the game is it free? Nobody on base, 2-0, 3-1 count where you're trying to get a hold of the fastball or something that you're going to see. Like, we still want to add a focus to, right? So there's really never going to be a quote-unquote free swing. Like, even for me, my last round in BP most of the time was a gap-to-gap round where I was trying to drive balls in gaps, but my focus was I'm going to act like this is either the first pitch of an at-bat where I'm hunting a fastball, or it's a 2-0, 3-1 count where I'm still hunting that same fastball in my zone. But there's still always a focus to it. For you high school guys and even you middle school guys, understand that no matter what swing you take, if I ask you or if any of the coaches in here asks you, hey, what's your purpose behind your swings right now? You should be able to give us an answer back that's productive. It's not just oh, well, I'm just getting loose. Well, that doesn't work because the getting loose has to have a purpose to it too, right? And that's how you grow within your swing. And you focus, and I know we talked a little bit about mechanics yesterday, but you focus less on the mechanics and more about how to become a good hitter, right? That was the point I wanted to add for the high school guys.
Ronnie, I'm really happy you brought that up too. I'm really, really happy you brought that up. And we're going to get into that with what you're doing individually, because with the individual work, obviously it's a little different with Jake and Adam having teams. And for me and you, Ronnie, being more individual, I coach teams too. So I'm kind of in between and trying to get the best feel, but I'm new to it. So I'm still here learning too. I'm learning from these guys and what they do, because you guys have been a little further ahead of the curve as far as instructional wise. And it's good to just hear different perspectives and different things. And you guys make a good point of sometimes the coaches just may not know. Like maybe our little league coach has no background and he's never played a sport before. Maybe our softball coach has never played softball or baseball ever. and they just came out to coach because they want to help us. And that's totally fine. That's totally fine. But just having focus with everything we do. And you can talk about week one. Like week one was all about the mental game and building mental strength and working on the most powerful muscle in our mind, which is the brain, in our body, which is the brain, and building that belief system up here that no matter what the situation, no matter what's going on around me, I am locked in, ready to go, and I am the best on the field. That's where in situations like this, the mental game comes into play so much. What is my approach? What is my mindset? Like, do I trust myself? Have I really worked as hard as I possibly could over this past week or two, or maybe in the summer over the past month or two to get myself in the right position? The ones of you that are in here that have showed up every day, and mind you, like there's a lot of things going on in our lives. We may not be able to make it every day, but the ones who have showed up or go back and watch these videos on YouTube every single day, you're going to go in the summer with one, more knowledge, which equals more wisdom as long as we use it, and two, a better idea of what works for you. That's the beauty of this, is what works for you. Like, you're going to be freaking locked in. I can't wait to watch some of you here play and just to hear the feedback. Hey, this worked. I was in this situation. I visualized myself driving a ball to the gap, and I drove a ball to the gap. I got the runner in. We won the game. Champions. Woo, like everybody's fired up. I'm excited to hear that. But let's get into the aspect of even like in the cage. Say we're in the cage. Okay, so now this is more applicable to everybody in here right now. Like, we're in the cage. And I had a question, so I wrote some of the different situations that we could put in, just at least visualize in and put ourselves in the cage of, hey, how do I get myself to see these situations and practice these situations in the cage? Well, guess what? You can visualize or think about in your mind, hey, this round for these 5 swings, runner on second and third, nobody out. Maybe I'm a left-handed hitter for these 5 swings, runner on first base, nobody out. The 4-hole is wide open. All I have to do is hit a hard ground ball to the right side. And Ronnie, you could probably elaborate more on that, being a lefty and like with your role as a guy, like that was probably something that you took advantage of. I know I did too, just be able to pump it through the 4-hole. Understanding what we're going to get as hitters too. Some of us older guys and girls in here, maybe not as much the younger, but 13 to 18, we're going to maybe be pitched a little differently. So in the cage, guys, Jake, we'll start with you. We can work down again. Like, what are some things that, like some ways that you can still make it competitive and put yourself in a position to be in these situations, even though there's nobody on base, nobody in the field, and you're in a cage situation?
Yeah, I think step one is know your identity as a hitter, right? So when we break it down at the high school level, we have 4 different types of players. So we give them their player type. So we have what we call ball players, which are guys that are kind of a jack of all trade. They need to be able to handle the bat. So they need to be able to get a bunt down, maybe choke stroke, so, pull back and swing. They need to be able to hit line drives. So their rounds are going to look a little different. Okay, then we have hitters, just a pure hitter, and that's hard to beat. But that's a guy with some pop. He's going to hit a few home runs. He's gap to gap. Then we have the power guy who's going to strike out more but hit it far. Those are the 3 guys. And then we have runners, right? And our runners are guys that are basically going to slap it in play and use their wheels. Okay, so once we know what type of hitter it is, then that for us drives how we're going to take our pregame rounds, because we want to prepare our hitters for what they're going to do in the game. Okay, so if you're a power guy, they're going to get down 0 bunts in their cage time, because we're not going to ever ask them to do that, because that's not part of their identity. So their round might look like, hey, you're going to come in, we're working first round hitters count. Let's drive a ball. Okay, second round, we're working 2 strike count. So now we're just working on shortening up a little bit to create contact. Okay, and first half of that round would be hitters or 2 strike. Second half would be the situations that we talked through. Runner on second and third, less than 2 outs. Okay, get something in the air. But that round is going to look different for those guys than it is for one of our runners, right? Because now we have a runner and it's, hey, runner on second, nobody out. Well, we're going to get a bunt down, right? Because if I have wheels, now that throw's going into right field and I'm scoring on that. So I think for a lot of you guys, it's one, figuring out your identity as a hitter, because you can maximize whatever that is. Okay, one story I like to tell, I'm a big stat guy, right? I love numbers. I think numbers tell us a lot. If you look at Alex Rodriguez, okay, his entire career, so his OPS, on base plus slugging, so how many times he got on and the damage that he did in getting on, was super high, right? He's a Hall of Fame player. Way better than somebody like Ricky Henderson, okay? But Ricky Henderson was a runner. That's what he did. He stole bases. He found his way on, he stole bases. if you add, and we'll get into a lot of this tomorrow when we start base running, if you add Ricky Henderson's stolen bases and you count them as singles, because he's essentially getting a base, his OPS is almost identical to Alex Rodriguez. So in the way that they played offensively, they were very, very similar in the output that they gave. It just looked extremely different in the way that they went about it. Okay, so that goes back to identity and who you are and knowing that. And I think once you have that, it's easy to figure out what to do in the rounds of the things that you're probably going to be doing in the game. And the second thing I'll say, and Austin mentioned visualization, but we are very, very key on when you're on deck before the game, you're behind that cage, and we're working timing and rhythm. So we want to get our front foot down on time for that BP pitcher. Hopefully they're hucking a little bit and getting you ready. So we're working timing, load, and rhythm. Okay. If you're in the hole, you know what that round is going to be. So we have our in the hole hitters sit down and their eyes closed, visualization of what they're going to be going through that round. So they're working through those situations mentally before they ever hop in the cage to do it live before a game. Okay. So really you get in the hole reps, you get on deck reps, and then you get live reps. And once the game starts, our expectation of what you're doing in those three situations are identical. If you're in the hole, we should be working, figuring out pitch sequencing. We should be working, visualizing situations that we might be in. We're on deck in the game, we're getting timing and rhythm, right? So it's the same thing, but a lot of times our preparation doesn't match that. And then we get into a game and we wonder why we're struggling to do those things at a game. Okay, the more you do it, even in a practice situation, the more comfortable you're going to be in a game situation to do it. So those would be my big keys. Figure out who you are identity-wise. Have rounds that match your identity as a player, and make sure you're using on deck and in the whole time as actual structured training time too. That's not rest time. Okay, we would call it that if we wanted you to just hang out. We call it chill time. That's after the game, but we want to win the game, so let's prepare accordingly.
Yep. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, so I was gonna mention, I got two things. Number one, when you guys are in the cage, I see this all the time where I'll get guys that literally when they step up to the tee, they stare at the ball on the tee all the time. Guys, understand that at no point are you ever going to be staring at a baseball that's not moving in a real game. The ball's going to be moving. It's going to be coming from a distance. So what I tell a lot of the young guys, so the 9 and older guys, 9 to 11, I always say, hey, listen, start your eyes at 46. 46 feet, it's where the pitcher is. Start your eyes there. Visualize and act like you're tracking the baseball in. And then for that split second, I want you to pick the ball up and kind of go from there. The reality of it, guys, is there's only a split second that you're actually going to really see the baseball, right? So we want to make sure that we're visually starting our eyes at a point that we're going to have to start them in a game. So that's my biggest thing when it comes to approach your tee work like you're in the middle of a game. And I think that that's going to help you guys consistently barrel baseballs up better. And the second thing is, I know a lot of guys like to hit by themselves. We got to stop doing that. And here's the reason why. There's a competition level when you guys are in the cage with multiple people. And I do a lot of one-on-one private stuff, but we're switching more to group training sessions only because I think it provides more value to the kids. But when I'm hitting and we're going through a runner on third base, less than 2 outs round, and there's 4 people in there that are getting 5 swings and working on execution, I'm going to look at my teammate that went 3 for 5, and maybe I went 1 for 5, and that's going to push me to be better in that situation. Go find a player that you're challenged by, or a player that you think is very similar to you, and hit with that person a lot, because I notice this a lot of times with our college and our professional guys, they don't like to hit alone. And the reason why is because they like to make sure that they're seeing where other guys are at. It gives them a little bit of a break while those guys are hitting, so they're not over swinging. And it helps them with their competition when they're focusing on their rounds. So, for instance, if you guys want to work on an oppo round, a round of 6, and you're going to take round of 6 and you're going to drive baseballs that way, and let's say you go 4 for 6, and then the next guy comes in there and that guy goes 2 for 6. You as the guy that had more hits to that side of the field, your second round, you've got to repeat that. So you're in a battle against yourself to continue to be consistent. But then the guy that only got 2 for 6 that round, his job that round is to try and not catch you, but his job is to be better than he was before. And so instead of getting 2 for 6, now he's 3 for 6 or 4 for 6. And you guys are constantly pushing each other to be better, right? We want to use competition as a way to improve ourselves. I think that happens in the cage too. So for a lot of you guys that go to the cage by yourself and work, I understand that you're constantly pushing yourself to get better, but it is good sometimes to see the other guys that are on your team or people that you're competing with and against, to go and work with them to see where they're at and how you can improve yourself. I think that's huge for competition and huge for getting better in situations for sure.
Ronnie, that's huge. There's 2 points I really want to reiterate and just hone in. And if you haven't listened to anything up till this point in the last 40 minutes, or if you are like struggling putting something down on paper, or if you're like, I'm so confused, 2 simple points. Jake mentioned, 1, visualize yourself in those situations. On deck is an opportunity to visualize. And what that means is seeing myself hitting the baseball, succeeding, or in the hole, or in the dugout. We have 20 at-bats. I think A.J. Pollock said it best. Like, I've got 5 at-bats before I hit when he was hitting 6 or something like that. Like, I've got 5 full at-bats to watch how the pitcher acts and how he throws and his stuff before I ever get up to the plate. That is huge. That is huge, huge, huge. If you want to play high-level high school, if you want to play college baseball for sure, and if you want to play professionally at all, that is something that you can do now. And imagine if you did that now and everybody else wasn't doing that now, because ideally there's a couple people from each team in here maybe, and then a lot of you are just single from a team, just one of you. So imagine if you did this every single time. And then you told your teammates, hey, try this out. You should try visualizing yourself hitting this guy or girl on the mound, whoever's pitching to me. Boom, I'm getting in my rhythm. You're going to be set up for success. You're going to give yourself the best chance to be successful. And then Ronnie mentioned something amazing, like find somebody else to hit with. Like, it's easy to go in there alone. It's fun to go hit off the tee. But guess what? It's awesome to pick somebody else's brain and say, hey, Adam, what are you thinking at the dish? Like, what's been working for you lately? You've been hitting really well. What's going through your mind? Or maybe they're not hitting well and you're hitting well. And they're like, hey, Austin, what's working for you? Like, by the way, I've been watching you swing. You look really good. You're super short with your swing and your compact. Like, why do you do that? You can learn something so much by just asking questions to your teammates and watching other people. And this goes from if you're 8, 9 in here to 18, 20. Like, we can learn so much from our teammates. And then the third piece with that is competition. We can compete with each other. Hey, how many times are you going to hit the back net today? Not today, Johnny. I'm hitting the back net 20 times. I'm going to win push-ups or Slurpees or QT or whatever you want to bet on it. Like, hey, I'm going to hit the back net more than you. That stuff's big. Adam, do you have anything to add to any of this?
Yeah. What I like about everything you guys have talked about so far, especially in the last times you guys all spoke, you guys are all talking about different ways to make the work that you're doing outside of the game as realistic to game situations as possible. So visualization, putting yourself in you're not visualizing hitting off of a tee, you're visualizing in-game situations. You're talking about bringing someone else into your batting practice rounds or your fielding rounds to see what they're doing, but also to have that competition level. All of those things are in-game type things. And that's what I want you guys to start doing on a regular basis. When you go out and work out, whether it is you're actually going and hitting, whether it is you're going to the weight room or you're not, you're going for a run, go out there with an intent to get better upon the last time that you worked on that, whether that's competing with yourself and tracking the things that you've done in the past and trying to improve on those things and make that a competition/game type situation, or whether or not it's competing against somebody else. And go into all of your workouts, all of your practices with an idea of what you're going to do, a plan ahead. Jake and I have this thing in our slideshow. I'm going to try to share my screen. It's the first time I've ever done it, where I don't know if that'll let me do it or not.
Yeah, let me. All right, I'm allowing you now.
Okay, but I want to show you this chart we have here for how to. Can you guys see it or not? Share. Hang on a second. First time I've ever done it. Here we go. Okay, yes. So we have this situational hitting chart that we have right here with 2 strikes and less than 2 outs. And it goes through situations of where the base runners will be and what your overall goal is of what you're going to do based on where the infield, the outfield is, and where the base runners are at, right? Okay. This is the type of thing that you could take and write out on your own. Guys, knock it off. Okay. You can write this out on your own ahead of time of, hey, these are the things that I'm going to practice in the cage today, right? I'm going to write out these situations, what I'm supposed to do with the ball when I actually hit it, and then go practice those things in the cage. Practice those with 2 strike situations. Practice those with hitters count situations. Not only, going and actually doing it in the cage, but writing this plan out ahead of time so you can test your knowledge of what you're actually supposed to do with the baseball when you're hitting it. And then also going out and executing that either on your own or in competition with somebody else, and like finding a way to keep score and, you know, competing against each other to keep that game type situation. So it's not about going out and just, did you go out and work on baseball today? It's about going out and, yes, you're working on baseball, but I have a plan in place and I'm going to try to improve upon that plan every single time that I go out. So we have different situation, you know, charts that we have. We have this 2-strike one. We have things that we'll try to do with, you know, hitters counts based on where you're at in the lineup and, you know, where runners are at and everything. I just challenge you guys to stop share. There we go. All right, back to it. Challenge you guys to go into your workouts with a plan in place as opposed to just blindly going out there and doing some work. You're going to get way more benefit and way more just overall progress out of your workouts if you're going into it with a plan. And that's one way to do it. Write out some situations you want to work on today, and then test yourself of like, hey, what am I supposed to do with baseball in this situation? Write that out and see if your answers are right. Ask your coach, ask us.
Big time, being able to just see the situation on paper and, hey, what is my goal here? Like, what is my intent? Intent is a big word, and sometimes we may not understand intent, so we say purpose, or we say like, what is my objective? What is my goal with this certain situation? And if you can ask yourself every single time, like, what is my goal in each situation? Now you're playing the game. That's called playing the game. Sometimes you can just go through the motions and you can go for 3, or you can go 3 for 3. You can go through practice and go through the motions, and you don't really get anything out of it. But I think you guys wanting to be here for an hour to learn, to grow, to get better is wanting to improve, and is one of the best. Like, you're trying to be one of the best. So just understanding that each time that we get out into the cage, whether we're in a cage, whether we're in their backyard right now, whether we ever get out on the field, whether we have any game-like situations, understanding that, hey, how can I be successful? How can I put myself in these situations to be more locked in and have that game-like feel? Because that's what it's all about. As coaches, we want to put you in positions to compete. We want to have you competing nonstop, because if you're competing, you're getting better and we're growing. That's why it's good to have more than just 10 to 15 players on a team, because now you've got multiple people at different positions pushing each other for those positions. And maybe you've got somebody who you're working with right now who's like trying to get better with, or maybe you don't. But finding somebody like that is huge. Do you guys want to add anything else to that, any of those, or any of these pieces?
No, I think the big thing on the slide that Adam showed is just recognizing that it mentioned 2 strikes, right? 2 strikes, less than 2 outs, because we've all said continuously, don't give up your entire at bat, right? So we still want to drive a ball, but once you get to 2 strikes, now we're really focused in on that situational intent to do something productive for the team. If he went 2 slides further, it would have shown our visualization. Okay, so what we do is we try to give our players specific visualization intent on those situations that they can take home and do away from the field as well. So when you are visualizing, don't just visualize the perfect situation to where you always get a fastball down the middle, right? Visualize full at-bats in those situations so you're comfortable with those too. All right, it's really easy to just visualize things that we think are going to be easy because we're always successful then. So make sure you're challenging your mind, visualizing as well, because you're going to be challenged in the game.
I got one other thing too, just to kind of elaborate on what I said before, because I know a lot of the work that we do is cage work. But I remember coming back from my first year in college, and I said to my brother, I was like, hey, I got like another 100 new drills, 100 new things that I can help you with and give you to make your swing better. I know a lot of you guys are probably going to your own private coaches, or you're doing your own thing with your dad or your mom or something, or whoever you're working with. But understand that when you do work with other people, that you can help them become better too. And there's probably a drill that they're doing that you're not, that can help your swing become better. And I remember giving out a lot of the drills that we did to help other people. And I think that really helps them, because maybe one of the drills that didn't work for me worked for them. And I think that's going to help you guys with situations. So for instance, with me, when I would get into try to hit the ball to the right side round, that's a pull round for me being a left-handed hitter, I would try to overswing. I remember vividly trying to overswing. And I remember talking to a kid who was 2 years younger than me. He was a freshman when I was a junior. And he gave me his cue on what he did to just try and be simple in situations like that. And it worked. So a lot of times you guys need to have conversations with each other on how to consistently get better and what they do inside the cage. So for instance, I didn't know to look 60 feet 6 inches whenever I was hitting until I had a teammate help me with that. And so if I would have never had that teammate talk to me about that, I probably would have never learned that until it got to a point where I was getting in trouble for it, because a coach would have expected me to understand that. So hitting a lot of times becomes a conversation, and learning how to hit in certain situations is huge. And you have to talk to other people to understand what makes sense for them in certain situations so you guys can get better. I think that's a big deal for sure. And when you guys are learning how to hit in situations like maybe you tense up in a runner in scoring position or a 2-0, 3-1 count, what works for somebody who hits well in those situations, I think those conversations are big.
Big time. That's big. I love that. I love this. And look, notice how like we can get better from each other. We can get better from each other. We can learn from each other. We can grow with each other. We can push each other. We can always find ways to continue to grow and get better. And we put the hitting chart in the chat just in case you wanted to go back and look at that and save it. I would recommend saving that on your file, and maybe just looking back at it here and there and just say, quiz yourself on it. What am I trying to do first and second? What am I trying to do second and third? Bases juice, runner on first. Just quiz yourself on it and just see, hey, where am I at here? And I think that's big because it's that self-reflection piece that, hey, these are the things that I need to do to be successful. And then you get to see it happening. So to kind of close out, we didn't mention the bunting. We don't have to do a ton of bunting, but I just want to lay the groundwork for the bunting because, yes, we don't like to bunt. A lot of people hate bunting. It's fine. We get it. It's home run, dingers, and taters time now. Like, it's all about hitting the bombs and throwing cheese. But each one of you is going to have to bunt at some point, whether it's in high school or whether it's in college or for sure in college, but maybe it's in youth and you're going to have to lay a bunt. Runner on first base, nobody out. You are bunting to the first base side every single time, no questions asked. The reason why is because the third baseman is crashing, which means he's coming in at you as a hitter. And so if you bunt it to third base, that gives him an easy lane to make a good throw to second base and turn a double play. The last thing we want as a bunter is to we want to bunt strikes. We don't want to bunt balls out of the zone. But two, to bunt the ball to the wrong side of the field, which makes it easy for that guy to make a play. And then now we're 2 outs instead of runner on second base, 1 out, and we were in the driver's seat. So runner on first base, nobody out. You're bunting to first base. Make sure we know that. The second thing, runner on first and second, nobody out. We're bunting to third base. The reason why, the third baseman is supposed to play closer to the bag. Some teams will have him crash halfway through a read, but for me as a coach, I'm having my third baseman read. So if the ball is bunted hard at my third baseman, he's coming in and making the play, throwing to first base. So as a hitter, we want to bunt the ball to third base, and our goal is to make the third baseman field the baseball. If we make the third baseman take a step towards us, that guy on second base is automatically safe at third. No questions asked. The shortstop's not beating him there unless they do a crazy round play. The pitcher's not beating him there. The third baseman's obviously coming into home. So if we can bunt the ball to third base, first and second, that is key. I just wanted to throw that in there, and I don't know if you guys have anything else to add on top of that. And then squeeze, final thing, squeeze. You got to lay the bunt down. If you're squeezing, you got to bunt the ball. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We've had that happen a few times.
I'll go after you. Go ahead.
Okay. Big thing that we teach with bunts, okay, everything Austin said is spot on as far as placement. We want our hitters to know your primary goal. If you get a bunt sign, your primary goal of that at bat is to get walked. Okay, because most pitchers are going to struggle because they know you're trying to get a bunt down, so they're worried about fielding their position. So the idea of bunting strikes is so vital because if we don't have to give up an out because you get walked, that's a win for everybody. Okay, so primary goal is to get walked, but odds are that doesn't happen. So then our secondary goal is to get a bunt down in that location to create pressure, right? If you sacrifice the bunt and you move the runner, that's great. But our big goal in that is an overthrow, or they pick it up and they don't know where to throw it, and we just get them thinking and create pressure. And here's what good teams will do. If we bunt to third and that third baseman screws it up, guess what? Our next hitter, he's going to bunt to third. We're going to make that guy keep thinking about that play until he proves that he can make it. Okay, we're going to completely pick on that kid because he's shown us that he can't make that play, right? So you can do a lot, and then you got to think when that kid comes up to hit next time, he's out of it. He's not going to hit well. He's going to try to do too much, right? So we can control our actions to get people out of their own game and out of their headspace, right? You know how it feels to be out of your headspace. We want to do that to opposing players and pitchers and everything that we do too. So number one, try to get walked. But two, if you get strikes, that's great. Bunt it, create pressure, run hard, do everything in your power to create pressure and potentially cause an overthrow.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that a little bit, I'm going to go back off what Austin said, where a lot of people don't really like bunting. So in all of our BP rounds, when we first start BP, batting practice with a coach or another player, dad throwing to you, all of our players have to start their rounds by bunting. And the reason why isn't to make you become the best bunter in the entire world, but it helps you visually watch the ball hit the bat.
Yes.
It helps you visually see the baseball hit the bat consistently for 5 or 6 reps in a row, because then once you actually start to take your swings, your eyes are going to track the baseball better, right? So understand that bunting in practice, not only doing it for getting better at bunting, right? Because it's good for that. We want to learn to bunt third base, first base, squeeze, all that stuff. But it's also good to help you guys track the baseball better too. I see a lot of guys take their eyes off the baseball early because they pull or they lose it, right? But if we actually track and watch the baseball hit the bat on a bunt, I think that helps us hit in our rounds a lot better. So especially in college, what we used to do is we would do 2 straight rounds full of bunting. You know, the first round was bunt third and first. The second round was a bunt and then like a slash or a pullback and swing type round. And the reason why we did that was to see the baseball before we get into our actual swings. So incorporate that into your batting practice, guys. I think that's huge. And you're going to get a lot better at it really fast as well.
Yeah, I'll just add to that and say that, yeah, for sure, continue to make sure that you are practicing bunting, because at a young age, and I would say all the way up until even most colleges, like I would say most colleges are still utilizing bunts in their offense more than obviously pro ball. So being able to bunt effectively is going to make it to where even if you're not seeing the lineup on a regular basis, it's going to give you opportunity to go in there and prove yourself to your coach and to your teammates that you can do something productive for your team. So make sure that you're getting those reps in and doing it. And one thing Jake and I always say is, as far as the importance of getting the bunts down, and even if you don't like bunting, if you get a bunt sign at the beginning of the at-bat, the likelihood of that bunt sign getting pulled off is very, very low. Probably the only time it's going to maybe ever get pulled off is if you're at 3-0. We might tell you not to do it. But if you get to 2 strikes, you're still bunting when it comes with us, because the likelihood of you being able to get a hit all of a sudden with 2 strikes is probably way lower than your ability to get that bunt down successfully. So go into it with the mindset of unless it's a suicide squeeze, that if you're going to be going for a bunt, your first goal is to get walked. So don't try to bunt balls that are outside of the strike zone. But if they are in there, make sure you get your job done and you do the thing that's best for your team. And the best way to do that is make sure you're practicing it on your own and not just in the few times that your coach makes you do it in batting practice.
Very big. Running is huge. If we want to get on the field, we want to play, we want to have more opportunities. Doing the little things with absolute certainty, with absolute passion, and taking pride in them is going to help us get on the field. It's going to help us contribute to our teams. It's going to help us win more games, which means we get to be seen more, which means we get opportunities to go play where we want to play. There's a question that came in. We got a couple minutes to answer it, and I'll let you guys answer this. When I hit, sometimes I don't stay balanced. So when I hit, sometimes I don't stay balanced. What should I do to not pull my head and to stay more balanced?
I'll take it.
Yeah, take it on.
All you, bro. You got it.
Let it rip.
I gotta go pee anyways. Good time.
Stop swinging so hard. That's it. It's easy. If you're off balance and your head's pulling all over the place, you're probably swinging with too much effort, man. Remember, baseball's not a game where it's not football mentality. We're not trying to swing as hard as we can every time. It's about squaring baseballs up consistently. So if you're a guy who's balance and you're a guy who has a head pull issue, the first thing I do for everybody is say, all right, tell me what percent effort you're putting into the swing right now. Are you at 100%? Well, guess what? Go watch a Major League Baseball game, and they're allowing the pitcher to do a lot of the work for them. They're not swinging very hard. You don't see a lot of guys in the big leagues that swing as hard as they can every time. They're not going to be consistent. We do a lot of things in our lives. We have a lot more control of things that we do at 50%. When we start to get our bodies in a situation where we're out of control, that's when we lose control of our barrel and our swing and our body. So I think that if you can tone your swing down just a little bit, instead of swinging, assess yourself. If you're swinging at 100%, dial it back to 60 or 75% and see where you're at. If you're still falling off balance or you're still pulling your head, maybe in your mind, you got to think about swinging 40% for you to have control of your body. Remember, at the end of the day, it's about control. It's not about effort. Because if you have control of yourself, you're going to be more consistent.
Yeah, and I'll add to that whenever I see a kid that I feel like is over swinging and they're off balance, I always tell them to make their goals of the next swing is to hold the finish. Because if you can't hold your finish in a balanced way, then you're over swinging and you're doing something wrong. Like go back to the playoffs last year when Juan Soto hit that home run off Garrett Cole and went over the train tracks. Like that's an absolute bomb opposite field for a lefty, right? But he holds his finish. He didn't have to swing as hard as he possibly could to get that ball out there. It's a controlled, aggressive swing, but it's balanced throughout. So if you can't hold your finish at the end of the swing, then you're out of control.
And most of the time, one of the cues that I give, I see Nolan in here. This is one that he'll know because I've given it to him many times. But a lot of times when you feel like you're off balance and you're overswinging with your upper half. So you're trying to do everything with your arms and your legs aren't right. So I'm okay. I tell a lot of hitters like, hey, swing as hard as you can with your lower half. That's fine. But let's just let the arms work. Just be smooth with the upper half. Let the legs work. And when you focus on the lower half, the kinetic chain just takes care of itself a lot of times. So I'd try that as a cue. Maybe mentally that'll work for you.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Thanks, guys. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for showing up again. We'll be back here again 1 o'clock tomorrow. Let's make it happen. We'll see you again. Keep crushing it. And we are 1 day away almost from Full Uni Friday. Let's go. Later, guys.
See you guys.
Later.